Hey there, this is Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is usually teaching tips, tools, ideas, and resources for new college instructors. This month, I'm theming my videos around the job search that I just completed. So recently, I've been posting instructional design videos, so frameworks to use to design your courses, for example, or different ways of creating learning objectives for your students. And that's because I was transitioning from college instructor into instructional designer. And so it's official. I have transitioned my career into ID. And so today I want to talk to you about my job search experience and some tips I have in case you're an educator looking to transition as well. And then I'll also have a video this month about why I transitioned, and then take you behind the scenes to see my portfolio that I used when I was applying for ID jobs. February, we'll go back to our regular teaching tips, ideas, edit tutorials, more instructional design, frameworks, etc. So it's official. I was on a job search for about 5 months in 2021, so between August and December. During those months, I applied to 65 different instructional design positions, and of those 65, I heard back from 7, up to this point at least. So 7 companies, one being a university, I interviewed with, and then about 15 or so have already, replied back saying, we're going forward with other candidates, but the large majority are still waiting to hear back from. Something to consider if you're on a job search is one of the companies that I interviewed with, they contacted me in November asking about an interview, and I had applied early October. It was the 7th company I applied to. They didn't get back to me until the last week of November. So if you've been applying, it could take some time, right? So I'm not sure how many I'll hear back from in the months that will come, but in a nutshell, 65 applications, around 15 or so have already said no. And again, 7 of them, I started the process with interviewing. Of those 7, I got 2 offers, and then obviously I've taken 1 to become an associate instructional designer. So I'm obviously very excited. I started the job this week. Basically, this company creates online courses for universities, so I'm excited to stay in the higher ed area, even though I've shifted from strictly teaching to instructional design. So in my experience, what helps the most was creating a portfolio, I believe, as well as using LinkedIn as much as possible. So I do have a video about LinkedIn Premium and why I definitely recommend it if you're on the job market. And even now I'm keeping it still for a little while longer. But LinkedIn proved to be very helpful for my job search. It was a way for me to network. I did some informational interviews with ID by looking at my extended network, so 2nd and 3rd degree connections on LinkedIn. I contacted them in the connect, with a private note saying, hey, I'm looking to transition. We both know this person. If you're open to it, I would love to do a short informational interview. I'd appreciate it, kind of deal. So I probably sent about 10 or so of those messages. I ended up doing around 6 or so interviews based off of that. So it ended up being very helpful. And ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, one of those who I contacted ended up working at the company that I'm at now. So I was able to interview her about her experience there specifically before I had my interview with the recruiter. So LinkedIn was very helpful for informational interviews. It was also really helpful for finding small contract projects in ID. So beforehand, in August, I started creating videos for study.com, and so that's semi-connected to ID in that I'm creating educational content and posting it online for high school students. But through LinkedIn, I ended up making a connection to someone else doing this transition, and she had posted about, hey, there's this website that are looking for educators to create units for their marketplace. So basically 3 to 5 lesson units for fellow educators to use in their classroom. So if you're interested, there's a sign up form. I'm like, sounds good, because one of the subjects was literature, which is what I teach. And I signed up, and I ended up becoming one of the content creators for Canopy. And so through that, I was able to do 2 ID projects, and therefore I was able to revamp my resume. So now my resume, rather than having the college instructor jobs as the main focus, I could start with instructional designer, because that was the title for that position. And I also added the video creator for study.com, and then I had my college instructor role as well as data and research coordinator. So I think that was a big element of getting more of these callbacks, is because I made the switch. Now, I'm not saying you need to have this in order to get a callback. So the one that took me a while to hear back from, they actually had my old resume that they were working with. So they hadn't seen the ID title. They hadn't seen the video title. They had only seen me working in different universities, and now was enough to get the call and then to get the first interview as well. So, if you can't do ID before you start transitioning, if you have experience as an educator, that can be enough just to show on your resume. But if possible, LinkedIn could be a great place to find these opportunities that can help boost your resume. So, informational interviews, looking for small contract work that can help boost your resume. 2 reasons to do LinkedIn. If you're doing premium, the salary research is also great. You can get a sense of different companies, what their salary ranges are. And again, networking in general. There's a lot of recruiters on there. There's a lot of people who create posts of EdTech jobs or ID jobs. I'll link some of the people below on this video so you can go and connect or follow with them. So really, it was a place to be when I was doing my job search. So really recommend it as the tool. And then, as I mentioned before, having a portfolio. So in this case, I hadn't done until Canopy ID work specifically, but as an educator, obviously I create educational content all the time. I designed all the courses that I taught. So what I did was I created not a private page on my website, but a page that isn't on my navigation menu. I have to actually give you a link in order for you to find this page on my website. And on there, I had a list of various content tied to instructional design. So here's an example of a PowerPoint lesson. Here's an example of storyboarding. Here's an example of a course I created with Articulate Rise, and then a module that I created with Articulate Storyline. And so basically having a list of, hey, here's a sample, and a little information on what tools I used to create it, and the reason behind my design of that particular piece. So I did the 60-day free trial of Articulate in order to create the Articulate Rise course and the Storyline module. And then when that was running out, I went ahead and just recorded myself doing a tour of those things on my screen. And I used those videos in my portfolio instead of the actual course and module itself once that subscription expired. So that's the way of doing it, is actually just like kind of creating the thing, and then you can record the thing before it expires if you need to. So I had about 7 or 8 things in my portfolio. So I had a PowerPoint, I had a storyboard, I had a video for my YouTube channel, one that was face-to-face, one that was screen recorded. I had the Rise course, I had the Storyline module, and I had an infographic as well, along with a workbook that I created for educators, my Successful Start series. So I do think I'll have a video showing you this page later on this month, so subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that. But I do think it was really helpful. I had a couple that mentioned, hey, thanks so much for linking your portfolio to your resume. It made it very easy to see samples of your work. Because of the 7 companies that I interviewed with, 3 of them actually required me to do my own activity for them. So a candidate activity where I proved that I can do the instructional design work. The others did not require that, but you never know, right? So some like, I see your work here, that's enough. Others like, hey, prove it to me by doing this activity. You have a certain amount of time to do so before you have to submit it. So other ones had just strict interviews. So we had the recruiter call, then we had the hiring manager call, then you had a panel interviews, and so on. So, but because I had the offers, I ended up telling the other ones, hey, I've taken an offer, I'm not going forward with the interview process. So the interview process really varied depending on the company. I had one that was just, hey, here's a recruiter call, here's an interview with 2 people, and we made the offer. Here's just an interview with 3 people, and we made the offer. The other ones were, here's a recruiter call, now do this activity, now have this hiring manager interview, now do this presentation with this panel, now have a panel interview, and then get hired, right? So it really depends on the job how long this process can take. So one thing I recommend is if you have an offer, but another job appeals to you more and you're in the interview process for them, let that person, let them know, hey, I have this offer, I have to make a decision quickly. Can we do our interview or the next step as soon as possible? And some might say no, this is the time we need, but if they're interested in you, they might say yes, which is the case with me. And so I got my second offer that I was able to take. So just keep that in mind. When you're interviewing, if you do have another offer, let the people know if you need to make decisions on when to interview, or just decide, you know what, I can't go forward, I'm taking the offer, or you might decide the offer is good enough, I'm gonna keep interviewing with these other companies. So just the timing was really stressful. So it's just something to keep in mind, at that point, if you get to the point where you have an offer, but you have other ones that you're more interested in, okay? So that was basically my experience. I was quite happy that I was able to land a job by the end of the year. That was one of my major goals for 2021, was finding a full-time job. And so again, my next week's video will be more about why I'm making the transition from college teaching to instructional designing. And then I'll have that portfolio overview video as well later on in the month. And then again, we'll switch back to some more teaching ideas. I'm looking forward to doing more videos about designing courses and about, ideas for activities to use as the semester continues. So I'll see you next time with a new video.